You to take your seats, please. Morning, how are you? Nice to get some energy into the room early in the morning. Thanks all for being here at the 10th anniversary Indiaspora Forum. My name is Sanjeev Joshipura. I'm the Executive Director of Indiaspora. And we are going to start out today with our plenary session called Kal, Aaj aur Kal, which is basically yesterday, today, and tomorrow, as many of you know. We are going to start with the first Kal, yesterday. And to do that, I'm going to invite a couple of people here up on the stage who were present with us at the very first event in Mohonk, New York in 2012 that was organized by MR, who's over here to my right, and Arun Kumar, who is our board member now. He's a partner at Celesta Venture Capital and was the former chairman and CEO of KPMG India, also previously an assistant secretary of commerce in the Obama administration, one of our most important guiding lights here in the organization. Arun, I'd like to invite you up to the stage if you wouldn't mind taking a seat. And also Shekhar Narasimhan, who many of you saw yesterday as the session chair of our politics roundtable. Shekhar, if you wouldn't mind coming up again, please. Shekhar is a very successful investment banker and also extremely actively involved in the community in terms of being a leader in the Asian American community, the AAPI community in the political realm. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to start off, I'm going to get off the stage now, but I'd like to start by inviting first Arun and then Shekhar to briefly provide their observations about Indiaspora 10 years ago and how they've seen it evolve. Arun?
Right, thank you, Sanjeev. Good morning, everyone. I'd say congratulations, Indiaspora. 10 years. Congratulations, MR. Where is MR? Congratulations. And a big thank you to you, MR, for your vision. A big thank you to Sanjeev and the Indiaspora team for all the hard work that has really succeeded, that has produced consistently interesting events for everybody in Indiaspora and pulled us all together. But let me go get a little personal here and start with the beginning, because I was indeed present at the beginning or before the beginning when MR bounced this idea off me of doing something with the Indian diaspora community. So I had known MR as someone who had spotted trends early. For example, he had done a very successful conference for C-level executives focused on technology and IT. Then he had spotted that environmental issues would be important to corporations, and he launched the Corporate Eco Forum, and I had attended a couple of those. So you always saw these things ahead of time. And then MR's got tremendous charm. So once he decides, he spotted an idea, he can pull all the right people together. It's incredible, that personal charm, what that does. So it was clear to him that the Indian diaspora will play a bigger role as we go forward. And he thought of creating a forum to bring the diaspora together, to be, as later on we've defined, to be a force for good. At that point, the idea was, what should we do together? It was going to evolve. So it was a privilege for me to be with him at that time. So thank you, Emma, for everything you've done. And I also want to thank Chris and Xenia and Anjali for all the support they've provided, because one thing you know is you can't do these things by yourself. You've got to have that huge support. So then not all of them are here. Xenia is here, I think, but our thanks to all of them. When I look back on the Mohonk Mountain Retreat, and by the way, I had a little bit to do with that, selecting that place, because I'm MR's advanced scout for all these retreats. Because I've been fortunate to go to a number of lovely retreats around the world, and I tell them, well, the next one's got to be Mohonk or Tarrytown or some other place or Lansdowne. But when I think back on the Mohonk retreat, it did a few things. One, I made some really good friends in areas where I would not have met people before. I met people in the arts, and I think of Vishwa, for example. I met people in academia, and I met people who were in public service. So I had spent almost 40 years in the private sector, And at Mohonk, I met people who were working in the White House, who worked with senators and congressmen. And some of them planted in me the idea of doing something in public service. So to me, I feel, when I think back on the fact that I later went and I served in the Obama administration, some of that came back to that meeting at the Mohonk Mountain Retreat back in 2012. Later, one of the folks I met at the retreat, Nisha Biswal, became a great collaborator for me in the Obama administration. She was Assistant Secretary of State for South Asia, and I was Secretary of Commerce for Global Markets, and we worked together a lot. We also had an involuntary appearance on a comedy show, the John Oliver Show, when a congressman famously saw two brown people and thought they must represent the Indian government, not remembering that we were actually representing the US government. Now that will not happen today, because as Neera Tanden said yesterday, there are over 100 Indian Americans in the White House, and I'm sure a lot more in other parts of the US government. So one of the changes from 10 years ago to now is that that is unlikely to happen. I wanted to just spend a moment on the purpose of Indiaspora, on being a force for good. And I think of the story of the Parsi community. Anybody here from the Parsi community? I know there are a few. You know, the story of how the Persian refugees from Persia came to Gujarat, and the ruler of Gujarat said, my home is full, and sent a bowl of milk that was full to the brim. And the leader of the Parsi group added a spoonful of sugar and sent it back and communicated, we will add to your community. We will sweeten your community, enrich your community. And I think that is the force for good that Indiaspora should be. We have come to a new home. Those of us in America, America as a home. The people from Indiaspora in other countries, those are their homes. But those are their homes, and our primary goal has got to be, how do we enrich and enhance the community that we're in? And I think with the Indian heritage, there's a lot we can bring, because both the values we've inherited in India and the values that America is committed to are very, very similar, very, very congruent. And in today's world, when we see so much division, I think it's all the more important to hark back to those values. And I was reminded, thinking of today's meeting, at a time that we see so much division around the world, of a great poem by Langston Hughes, who in my view is one of the greatest American poets. We said, let America be America again. We can help America be America again. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun, and good morning. Namaste, Vanakkam. And I can try to figure out other languages. So, Arun, I learned today that you are the reason that I ended up going to a place called Mohonk. It was cold, damn cold. And there were about 90 people I'd never met before. And the most interesting thing was, and no offense to any Canadians, are there any Canadians in the room? Oh my God. Okay, don't throw anything, but ice curling is the most frigging boring thing I've ever done in my entire life. I think you just have to have a lot of time. And by the way, if none of you has ever done ice curling, don't worry about it. But it's a great team sport because it takes forever, and the rules are really arcane and bizarre. So you get like bonding stuff done in ice curling. So there you go. We're going ice curling. We're spending time on the porch with people we've never met before, talking about stuff we'd never talked about, like at that time, 10 years ago, social impact, the role of Indians in India, the role of Indian diaspora in the United States. It was really eclectic. It was really exciting. And it created a sense of community, which is, I think, what MR really embodies. And a sense of community is got to have a high ROI, which means that your investment is relatively small and your return is very high. And the reason why that works here is you come to 1 or 2 meetings a year, you meet a bunch of people, hopefully a lot of people you've never met before. You go back, you ask, what was I doing there? What was my purpose? And by the way, if you ask that question a lot, you don't belong in Indiaspora, because I learned it doesn't have a good answer. Everybody's answer to that question is your own answer. I met someone, I got an idea, I networked, I did something. It propelled me to think about something I hadn't thought about before. That's the ROI. So don't expect it to be sort of tangible. I gave out a business card and got a deal done. No, that's not the purpose. So figure out your purpose here, but once you do and you realize the ROI is so high in the network, in the sense of community, in the sense of belonging, you'll come back, and you'll come back again and again, and that's what I've done. That's what Arun has done. The third thing is when we say kal, aaj, or kal, what does tomorrow bring to an organization like this that has created a sense of empowerment and community already? And my answer is to anyone in the leadership and to all of us is how do we create the safest and most inclusive place that we can for the Indian diaspora. And I'm not using a buzzword, and I'm not trying to be politically correct or anything. I'm not, by the way. Generally, I'm trying to say that it's so important that in a community and in a world that has so much division, that there has to be a place you can come and say what you believe, say what you think, and not feel that repudiation and negativity will follow. So if you can make that commitment for the next day and a half, that's probably the most important commitment you can make in the room. It's not whether you agree or disagree, but can you have a civil conversation? And I also want a place for 10 years ago, I didn't have any grandchildren to come. I want them to start to feel a sense of belonging to this larger community that also gives back as much as they want to give back, and hopefully what they can contribute in the future. But that's my wish for the future. But for the present, the most important thing that every one of us can do is actually meet 2 or 3 brand new people and start to believe that the power of those connections and of our work together will completely change the face of the universe for the better. So thank you, Indiaspora. Thank you. Congratulations for being here. It is fantastic that we are back here at the same place 4 years later. And it's so important that we keep those traditions of going to places which give us that safe place. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Shekhar and Arun. You'll find that a lot of what you've said will carry forward in terms of threads through the rest of this plenary session. What we are going to do now is I will invite the reason for Indiaspora's being.
Hold on. We get to do that.
Okay, all
so
right.
We'll do 1,
Carry
2,
on.
3.
Go ahead.
Here comes Amar.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Arun. Thank you. I think they did the whole presentation for me. So thank you, everyone, for coming. It's overwhelming. 10 years being at the start of the journey in Mohonk. So let me tell you this, as an entrepreneur, and there's several of you here in the audience, you are blinded by enthusiasm and belief. So imagine this, 10 years ago, I call 100 people. I don't know most of them. And I tell them either fly to JFK or take a train from Boston or Philadelphia or Washington to New York City. Then rent a car. There was no Uber in those days. Rent a car, go for 2.5 hours into the middle of nowhere in upstate New York and spend a weekend with me. That's the proposition I gave 100 people, and 95 of them showed up. So that's when I knew I had something here. But if I were to do it again, I would never do it that way. I can't believe I pitched that to all these people, and they all actually showed up. So that was the beginning at Mohonk. And the first thing we set out to do was there was so much rah-rah at that time. We are the richest community of ethnics in the US. We were 7% of the doctors. We were 10% of the IT workforce. But when we looked around, we had no influence in the US system. We had nobody in Congress. There was zero. So one of the first aspirations of Indiaspora at that time, if you remember Shekhar and Arun, was if we're 1% of the population, let's become 1% of Congress. So that was the first proposition we started with. And again, Indiaspora is a nonprofit. We can't give money to any politician or endorse anyone, but the network over the next few years gave money to anybody with an Indian name. Kanna, Krishnamurthy, Kamala, Jayapal. I mean, that's what we really did, right? To all these people. And to get this whole thing going in 2013, we actually did the first Indian American ball for a president. And we met in Washington, D.C. There were 1,300 of us who gathered there. Some of you are here in the room. And that was the first time we showed how we can be influential in politics. And soon, you know, people started getting elected as well, right? And so in 2017, we had a gala in D.C. to celebrate. We were 1% of Congress. All it took was 3 election cycles. That was pretty quick when we were able to get to be 1% of Congress. So that was the first aspirational goal that Indiaspora took when we started. Then what happened was one of our founding members, Sunil Wadhwani, mentioned it in Indiaspora meeting 2 years into it, saying we should be looking at really at giving back in philanthropy. And he set a goal saying we should look at how we can double the giving of the Indian diaspora. So that was the next part of our journey, was to take philanthropy as a key pillar of Indiaspora and try to see how we can move that forward. We did a survey, we did lots of Chalo Give programs. In fact, during COVID was when the community really stood out. When we were able to do the Chalo Give program, we, along with all our partners, we were able to raise $15 million for COVID relief in the US and in India. So, so we want to thank Sunil for giving us that idea. And so philanthropy is at the heart of Indiaspora now. We want to be known as givers and not takers, because that helps us in so many ways. Recently, you've seen a spate of hate crimes in the US against Indians. What does that mean? We are misunderstood. They need to really understand who we are. We're not taking their jobs away. We're not doing anything bad. We're actually giving back to the community. And so that's very important, that philanthropy is something we project and we do more often. We do it publicly. And the Indian culture doesn't permit us to say, hey, I gave $1 million to someone. But many other people in many other cultures do that, and that sends a message to the community as well. So philanthropy is a big deal, and we're still working on how to double the giving of our community. So one of the things you'll be hearing from over the next day is Give India and US and Indiaspora formed a partnership in order to double the giving of the Indian community and America in general to India. So that's one of the new things that you'll hear from. The second one is about what we do where we live. Give where we live is what we call it. So you'll hear a very interesting program chaired by Mayura that talks about how we can really give back to the communities we live in any country, not just in India, but in any country we live in. So that's coming up as well. So philanthropy is another key component. And entrepreneurship. Look around this room. There's so many of you who are entrepreneurs running unicorn companies or venture capitalists. There's so much in the entrepreneurship space that this community can give to other parts of the diaspora and to India as well. So one of the things we're doing is building a strong bridge between India and the US. There are lots and lots of entrepreneurs who are moving from India to the US to be close to their customers and to sell into the US market. So India is being a bridge by mentoring, advising, investing in entrepreneurs who are coming from India. And the next big thing to ask is, how can we help the diaspora in other countries where they're not as fortunate? When you look at Guyana, Trinidad, Suriname, Fiji, large swaths of Indian diaspora there, but they don't have the same, culture of being an entrepreneur or starting a business. How can this diaspora help other diaspora? So these are all the questions we're asking as we move along. And then the other thing is on how we project our identity. Indiaspora started producing several lists of CEOs of companies. And to our surprise, we found there's 60 CEOs in the Fortune 500 who are Indian. So that's a huge number. More than 10% of Fortune 500 CEOs are Indian. Yet we're only 1% of the US population. Just think of that. Same thing in politics. There are over 25 countries where we have 200 people of Indian origin as presidents, prime ministers, vice presidents, and so forth. So lots of things going on. where we project our identity. And same thing we did with philanthropists. We have a list of 100 top philanthropists. And now Raka and the team at Indiaspora are creating a list of social entrepreneurs who are young. And you saw some of them yesterday. So this is the kind of thing we can project. But at the same time, we have to see the other side of our community. I don't know if you realize, we produced a report a few years ago called The Invisible Indian. There are 8%, I think 8% of the Indian community in the US lives below the poverty line. Just in this county, the Santa Clara County, I believe, there are 5,000 Indians living below the poverty line. But they're invisible. We don't know who they are, why they're there, but it's upon us to help those people. As well as immigration was an issue discussed yesterday. Indians are the second largest undocumented population in the US, next to Mexicans. Just think of that. I think there are between 300 and 400,000 Indians who are living in the US without papers. So there's also communities within our community we need to help and reach out to. So that's part of our obligation, I think, to society as well. So it was interesting when Ami Bera was with us in 2013 at the presidential balls. One of the reporters asked him, what do you think will happen in the next 10 years? And he said, you know, there could be an Indian American president. And we're very close. We have an Indian American vice president. So we're getting there, but there's a lot of obligations on our community to do more. And I think I want to leave this with saying that we need to be known as givers and not takers, and that's the ethos of Indiaspora, is to help everyone, to really do good. And I'm a Golden State Warrior fan, and one of our mottos here is strength in numbers, and that's what I see here. Together we can do a lot more. So I want to thank my family. I want to thank all of you members, the community, our friends, for making this journey happen. As Arun pointed out, this is the third network I've started, and I give a commitment of at least 10 years to each network. I'm still founder and active in all those networks, but this one is very special to me because this is my heritage, my culture, and my identity. So thank you all for being here. I want to thank my family, my friends, and all of you one more time. And so this has been an amazing journey, and I can't wait to see what the next 10 years has for us. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks, Sanjeev.
Thanks, Emma. Just 3 or 4 other things I'll emphasize that Indiaspora is busy working on right now. They've been alluded to already, but I think they deserve a little bit more detail. One of them is what we call our Global Connect program, which is essentially our global activities. And up to 2016, Indiaspora for the first 4 years was very much a US and a US-India corridor organization. But 2017 is when we started to globalize. We took a delegation to Israel, where we met with the, not many people know this, but Israel is actually 1% people of Indian origin. A lot of Jewish folks from India migrated from different parts of India to Israel after Israel got its, the state of Israel was formed. But we met with a lot of entrepreneurs. We met with Prime Minister Modi in Jerusalem, and we talked about a technology triangle between Silicon Valley and the Indian Americans here, Israel and India. And we were then invited to India to continue that dialogue when the then Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel went to India. So we continued a trilateral dialogue in India on technology, entrepreneurship, philanthropy, and lots of other areas. Then after Israel in 17, we went to Canada in 18. And in Canada, Justin Trudeau introduced us to 4 of his cabinet ministers who are people of Indian origin. We met with the top Indian diaspora leaders in academics, philanthropy, business, finance, entrepreneurship while we were in Canada. We followed that up with a delegation to the UK. And in England, we were fortunate enough, we had a fairly large delegation. We had about, I think, 45 or 50 people. We were fortunate to be felicitated by the House of Lords and the House of Commons. And I think about 35 or 40 British parliamentarians came to meet with us, many of them of Indian origin. and others very interested in UK-India relations. And then last year, we went to the UAE in 2021, in November 21, and the UAE was in the midst of signing a comprehensive economic partnership agreement with India at the time, and so a lot of their cabinet ministers and the top Indians in the UAE were keen on meeting with our members. Also, most importantly, within our global work, there is no Indiaspora without India. And so we've opened up an India office, and our India team members are here with us today as well. We just opened it up earlier this year, and we held our first India Global Forum, where we had people from various different countries, and this was in August, and we had a forum much like this one, and lots of dialogue on various different areas that we are taking forward. So that's essentially our global angle. Then I'll talk just very quickly about diaspora next. It's a thread that was started during the conversation, I think, by Shekhar, and then MR briefly mentioned it. We are very keen on being an organization that engages and that sustains our engagement over the years with the younger up-and-comers of the Indian diaspora. They are so impressive and so accomplished in their own right in many different ways, and we find that there's a lot that we can learn from them, we can engage with them, we can learn what their interests are, and marry that with the Indiaspora's overall overarching mission of being a force for good. And then lastly, I'll just mention our social impact work. And within our social impact work, there are a few strands. MR mentioned collective careers, which you'll see more of later today in the afternoon plenary. The essence of the idea here is that, and by the way, this was socialized initially among a small group of Indiaspora members that became larger, and then we decided to invest our efforts in collective careers. The essential idea here is that the Indian diaspora here in the United States have done exceedingly well on the coasts, in finance and entrepreneurship and venture capital, West Coast, East Coast. So many of you are examples here today. But America as a whole has, in parts, especially in the center of the country, in rural areas, ethnic minority communities, there are parts of America that have suffered and are suffering. Some of them have lost jobs to the tech revolution. And so what is it that the Indian diaspora can do to help America at large? It's part of the give back where you live concept that MR had talked about. So you'll learn more about that. We're going to talk about upskilling and reskilling. You'll learn more about that this afternoon. Before I end, just two things I'd like to do. First of all, huge thank you to our board members. Arun, you've already seen. I think Sejal Hathi is somewhere here, one of our other board members. Or maybe she'll come by just a little later this morning. And then we have two people who couldn't be here due to really exigent circumstances. Priya Natarajan, and who's in Boston at Yale, and Rajan Navani, who is in Pune, India. So a huge thank you to them. A huge thank you to our members who support and sustain us. This would not be possible without you. A huge thank you to our network of friends, our wider network. We keep learning a lot from you and keep exchanging ideas, and we are so much a richer community because of you. And I'd also like to say a huge thank you to our team, my team here at Indiaspora. If you don't, I'll introduce all of you tomorrow at the end of the last plenary, but if you don't mind, if you can just stand up, all the Indiaspora team members. Thanks for everything that you do on a day-to-day basis. And a big thank you as well to Christine, who manages our events for us. Christine, give a wave from the back of the room, please. 2 or 3 logistical things before we launch into our community town hall. Number one, we do have a no-selling code of conduct here at Indiaspora. This was brought up as well earlier today about expecting sort of tangible ROI by signing a $1 billion deal in the next 1 month after you came to Indiaspora. That's not the purpose of Indiaspora. We are about sharing, giving, and learning. And we do have a no-selling code of conduct here. That's the basis on which our members join us. That's the basis on which people attend our events. So hopefully, if any of you are feeling pressured or uncomfortable with selling, do let me know and we'll have a conversation with the relevant people. And the last thing I'll talk about is just in terms of logistics is on the record and off the record. So the media, for those of you members of the media that are here today, the plenary sessions, both plenary sessions today and tomorrow, the one tomorrow, are on the record, as you know. The breakout sessions today and tomorrow are off the record, and the roundtables yesterday, as the media was made aware, were off the record as well. So that's just some basic ground rules of this event. With that, I think it's time to move forward. MR, you're going to get your steps in, so I'm going to invite you back up to the stage. Let's start our community town hall. Are you ready?
Yeah, one thing, Sanjeev, I
Go
want
ahead.
to say this. You know, I'm always put down in the book and everything as a founder, but really the founders of Indiaspora, the 100 people, or 95 people who showed up in Mohonk. So people like, you know, Arun and Shekhar, but also others you'll hear from today, like Neera, Varun, Shivaram, I'm trying to think of some of the other names, Sheel Tile,
Yeah,
Sejal
absolutely,
Hati.
absolutely.
There was so many. I don't know if I missed anyone else, but there are 95 of you, and really I consider all of them as founders. And in that spirit, I think we need to kind of hear from people here as well.
Absolutely, that's exactly right. And that's why we decided to have this community town hall. So what I think we'll do, MR, is we'll start off. There are 3 or 4 people. The community town hall, by the way, is open for everybody to present their thoughts, ideas, briefly, talk about. There are people in the back of the room that will come to you with a microphone. Present your thoughts, ideas, suggestions about what you think Indiaspora should do, is doing, can do better, can do differently, ought to get engaged in. So it's a very, very open, informal discussion. There are 3 or 4 people who I'd like to call upon right away. One of them I'd like to start with is Gary Gauba on my left over here. Gary, it was one of your ideas that we discussed and socialized to have this town hall. So why don't you start by telling us very briefly what you think about Indiaspora today and tomorrow. Gary, if someone could pass the microphone to him, please.
Thank you, MR Sanjeev, and congratulations on 10 years. What, 250 members now, 7 countries, and I think what you're doing is amazing. And as any organization, right, you got to adapt and evolve. And as MR and I were talking about this event, I said, you got to think out of the box now. I know all of you guys got a survey, and hopefully everybody did fill the survey to give your input. You know, so a few things I talk a lot about, right? No matter who you are, you cannot buy time, right? We only live once. So that needs to dictate what you want to do professionally and personally. And each of us are in different stage of our life journey. And as humans, we have a tendency to do a lot more, right? And I think it's just important to focus. And I think what MR and the team has done, right? They put together very powerful members who can help each other and the generation, the younger generation. I have 3 kids, and they can learn a lot from us to avoid the complexities we went through. So it's just important, right? Share what you want to really get out of Indiaspora. When you're coming here for a meeting, you're taking time away from your family. So there needs to be a clear purpose. Why am I here? Okay, what will I accomplish both professionally and personally? Networking is just one element. Networking with purpose becomes very critical. So when you go out of here, you got to ensure, okay, these are the 3 things I wanted to accomplish. And did I accomplish those? If you did not, then you got to adapt, right? I could keep going, but I think it's very important that we hear the voice of everybody out here, how we adapt, right? And how do we grow the chapter out here. It's a global organization right now, and giving back is equally important, and all of us have different nonprofit causes, and you should share that within Indiaspora, right? 2 years back, I launched a nonprofit which is all about educating underprivileged, underserved kids on cyber. Cyber continues to be a big, big threat. Autism is another area, and I think we got to share, obviously, and Indiaspora is very good in terms of sharing some of those elements, right? So it's a combination of, you know, where you are in your life journey and how do you want to either give back or you're trying to move into a different area, how you can take advantage of different members, their experiences, right? Back to you, Emma. So,
Thank you so much, Gary.
yeah.
Thank you, Gary. And as you were talking about sharing and giving back, there is one thing that I remembered that I was remiss not to talk about, and I'll just briefly mention it now before we move on to our next identified participant in just a second, which is our civic engagement work. Indiaspora has been very involved not only in allying with other communities such as the African American community, the Jewish community, the East Asian community, in terms of standing together with them on issues that matter. We are looked at as the voice of the Indian community in that context, but also in the recent spate of hate crimes that has occurred against the Indian community here in America, Indiaspora has lent a strong voice on that subject as well. Let me move on to the next identified participant that I'd like to call upon is Smita Siddhanti. Smita, can you stand, please? Smita is right here in the front. If you can get a microphone which is coming over there.
Can you hear me? Good morning, everybody. Good to see a larger crowd, and of course, thanks Indiaspora for bringing us all together. Amar, you're a force to reckon with. But reflecting on, I've been with Indiaspora, I think, for the last 5 years. I was recollecting when in the retreat in Terrytown actually ignited a lot. So my thoughts about, couple thoughts about having been part of several organizations. I'm part of Thai Global board. I'm part of many other organizations along the way, and having lived a long time here. Did I turn this off? It's on. In the entrepreneurial journey that I have had, we go to different organizations with, and we've built, as a community, we've built religious organizations, we built cultural organizations, and then we built entrepreneurial professional organizations like Thai and others, where we exchange more professional growth. This is the only organization that I know and that does something for purpose. And to me, that was the most attractive part of this organization, and why I think it's a very important force that we need to develop. Just the motto itself is very attractive to me. And I think the people who come here are differentiating because they are making an impact, whether in whichever sphere they are making an impact, because that a force for good is very definitely touching to me. So I'm sure that you all feel that way. The part that the example that Shekhar brought up, that so what is the ROI by being part of this or coming here? I can already tell you that just by being here, whatever journey you're in, to your point earlier, we are all in a journey and we have arrived at a certain point, whether they're younger people or older. But you resonate and you attract from universal forces, whatever they take the next step. So I'm on a journey, let's just say that, of giving back the whole technology transformation for rural development, whether it's US or here. So with Stanford and another organization called Wheels, we are working on that direction. And I just met, and we are also trying to create an Indian Institute of Development, Sustainable Development in India. And I just met, just yesterday, a couple people in that very sphere who are working in that direction. So it's either accidental or whatever you say, but because they are here for purpose, I ended up meeting them and will obviously take that forward. And in addition, I run a social entrepreneurship special interest group for global on Thai, the Indus entrepreneurs level. And I met some professor who's doing the same thing. So I just want to say to everybody and the younger people more who are here that there is no other forum where you could connect to your purpose. And that's I think, as we go forward, that's where we want to be. And I'm hoping that my younger generation, along with, will rather see places like this, because it's hard for them to relate alone to very traditional Indian organizations that we have built, because they do think themselves as a part of that. And the last thing I say is the juxtaposition that we are in terms of India being growing to be a big force in the world, Indians who have established themselves where we have. And then the other part of the way the country is going more right and thinking much more in a religiously right fashion, we are in a place where we have no choice but to make that difference in this country. We have no choice but to not live in our own cocoons, but actually be part of the bigger diaspora, to become a diaspora for impact. And that's how we need to be seen, and that choice doesn't exist. So we all need to be very cognizant of where we can make the impact and explicitly show to the world how we're doing it. Unlike just write a check and not know about it, I like the fact that you're giving a certain visibility to that and a certain visibility to this, because that's the only way we can create that sugar that Arun talked about in the cup. So thank you. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
So I think one of the things to add to that is when we started Indiaspora, one of the basic things we have discussed from day one is 50-50. You know, it's not gender parity, it's gender equality. And it's good. I think we did a math on this one. I think it's, this audience here is 55-45, men and women. So we're almost there. We need all of you women in the audience to help us get to 50-50 or even more. So that's one. And the second thing was to have at least 10% of the people in our community be under 35. So that's another big thing for us. We don't want this to be an old folks' home. Right. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So those are a couple of the things we're doing as well. So good. Thank you for all the young people here who are attending.
Absolutely. Started off with a great session yesterday with some inspiring young people. Can I call upon Vab Goyal, who is sitting here again?
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Sanjeev did not give me a whole lot of details as usual. He just said you need to come and talk a few things. I've been a member of Indiaspora for, I think, close to 4 years now. And I like to start first by being in a great gratitude to MR, Sanjeev, but more importantly, the team who supports them. You know, we all are being lucky. We probably are members of a lot of different organizations. We get invited. It is pretty remarkable the team MR and Sanjeev have assembled. Every invitation, every contact is so personalized. If you don't respond, they will keep following up in a very, very nice way. But some of us who are busy, especially the person like me who everything I do at last minute, is just unbelievable support. To me, Indiaspora has been a place to get motivation to do more outside of my business and my personal life, and it's a place to come and be grounded, because you meet so many amazing people, so successful people, but so down to earth, and which is important. So to me, it's been a great place. I'm aging very fast now, right? So I'm not young, but 35. So the priorities of life are changing. So you end up meeting really new friends where you can have your guards down. So you're not talking about new business deal or what you're doing or which house you bought and so on. So you can be just yourself, not have to pretend, right? You're not looking for something, but you're just having a very deep conversation. Other interesting part is, yes, we are from India. You know, some of us have lived more than half of our lives here. Our kids are born here, so we cannot just say we are just Indian, right? I always say like we are global citizen being in America. And Indiaspora has been an amazing place where it keeps us connected, or at least me connected to the important issues and topics which are important to US. But at the same time, it takes me back to India, right, where I don't visit as often. I like to, but what's going on there. And it's very inspirational what they have done. The other part is we all can give money, right? We all talk about giving money. But what's amazing to me is goes back and taken the COVID time. MR was basically calling around, you know, and making personal calls to figure out who can take the PPE equipments back to India, right? He calling the FedEx CEO at that CEO at that time, who's a CEO now, and he was calling the hospitals and stuff. And on a personal level, it's amazing. If you know this or not, there's nothing MR cannot get done for you. So he's my personal concierge and his team, all the way up to, right, if you need a reservation and a restaurant which have a 1-year waiting list in Thailand, he can get you connected with someone who can, I mean, it's mind-boggling what he can do, right? And on personal level, I'll go back to the COVID. One of my relatives was really sick, to being able to help connecting with the head of hospitals to get the bed and all this stuff. I mean, it's really amazing. So my request to, where we take, I think, keep inspiring us and keep pushing us to do more and be part of the amazing community. Thank you, Sanjeev and Amar.
Thank you. Yeah. That was, I know, a very tragic situation. We tried to save your, I think, cousin, and that was so heartbreaking in Delhi to try to get him a bed. He had a bed, but he had no oxygen, and we had to try to figure out how do we get him to a hospital that had oxygen. Yep. And unfortunately, he did not survive. It was heartbreaking. It was, and same thing, in all our families during COVID, we lost somebody. I lost my sister during COVID in India, but it was also really heartbreaking because nobody could go to her funeral. You had to do that with nobody in attendance. So it was really horrible times, but the community stood up. Everybody stood up and helped each other.
There's no question, yeah. That was at once the most heartbreaking time and also an inspiring time, in a sense, to see the response of the community. I'd like to call upon our last identified speaker before we get into a wider community town hall discussion, which is our global ambassador, Debottam Bose.
Everyone, can you hear me? It is on. I'm so excited to be here. First of all, I'm very jet lagged, and I don't think I've ever been this excited whilst being jet lagged. But for me, this is really incredible. I wanted to share, first of all, I met MR in 2012, and this was in New York City at an elevator in Sotheby's. And the conversation, you can imagine, was from art, but also from very early on was about community and giving back. And I think that's something that, we are all here, we are celebrating 10 years. I was very lucky to be in India also when they celebrated just before India's independence. And that was, again, a great event. And I'm a lawyer. I specialize in something called art law. I'm India's first art lawyer. But I also do something called philanthropy. This is a practice. And two things that I wanted to share with you, and also kind of the next 10 years journey. We all heard about the personal challenges that so many of us faced during the pandemic, and the incredible generosity that each and every one, from in terms of contacts, of course, money, but in just giving to save lives. But I think going forward, and all of us here in this room and people that we know, we are incredibly privileged, and I agree with every single speaker that we do have an obligation to think beyond our current circumstances. So the area that I'm very passionate about is education and public health. So from Indiaspora and all the members, we have over 250 members, and across, it'll be growing over the years. If we believe in communities, and if we can connect the communities where we all live, be it in the US, between the UK, India, and US, and if we can connect the communities, let's say in the Silicon Valley, to the communities in India, and we let's adopt a taluka, a small area within the state, and focus. We take up healthcare, we take up education. It can be anything, that whatever you're passionate about, and spend that time understanding the problems over a slightly longer period and deploy your resources, appoint consultants. And I think that would be an incredible game changer over your own lifetime and also your children's lifetime, because I agree that yes, we are from India, but the next generation, they're brought up in the US or brought up in the UK. So they equally have a very strong connection. But how do you make that connection sustainable? And it's only when you connect the communities and spend that time. And I think an organization like Indiaspora, who's done so well, particularly with connecting the communities. If we look around us, and if you've attended a lot of the other events, it really is about communities and making it so approachable. One of the hallmarks of MR and Sanjeev and the team is they're incredibly approachable. And that is a game changer when it comes to building relationship. So that's the first thing that I wanted to share with you. And the second thing is, we are celebrating 75 years of Indian independence. And I do a lot of work in education, so I'm part of Oxford University. I'm also part of Tata Trust. And so they have an endowment, so we give scholarship to talented Indian students to study anywhere. Or I help with scholarships for Indian students to go and study at Oxford, and we're starting something at Cambridge. And the reason these are all Ivy League prestigious universities is that these are first-generation Indians whose parents or families, they've never been abroad, and for them to go to one of the top universities in the world are game changers. So coming back to Indiaspora, and if we focus on just, let's say, at number 75, and in the next X years, we kind of come up with a position where we help students from India to come and get educated in colleges or wherever it may be, and members take that initiative under Indiaspora. I think that could be fantastic. And also the same Indian who's going to come to the US and study, they can actually spend some time in the US and connect with the communities. And one of the biggest challenges we are also having, and globally, this is not something that the US is facing or UK or India is facing, is elderly care and old age. And when people are sent to old age homes, there's a huge problem in terms of just having the bandwidth for people to spend time with them. And because of our heritage, because of our culture, we always, for us, it's never it comes natural to us that, we will look after our parents, or we will try our best to do that. So I think, again, looking at the strengths of our community, and if we can connect what there is a need now, and also what there is a challenge in our community, if we can connect those dots, I think that would be amazing. And finally, this is, as I mentioned to you, one of the hallmarks of this Indiaspora events is the people that they come together. So I'm really looking forward to spending more time with you all, and thank you again for giving me this chance to speak to you. Thank you.
I think, Sanjeev, this community thing is a big deal. And one of the things is there are 32 million people in the diaspora. But of course, there are 5, 6 big centers like the US, Canada, UK, Singapore, UAE, and Australia. But one of the things that we are trying to tackle next year is how do we connect these 32 million? Can we develop an app that gives them all the information and services? Can that app then be supercharged by having a credit card or credit facility that really shows the purchasing power of our community? Right. So these are things we're noodling on for the future. But also, how about a concierge service? I know we've been thinking, how do you connect the Indians abroad to India? So
Absolutely.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think, there's a lot of people here from the United States and various other countries. We keep hearing from our members, from other people we know, whether it's in the US, the UK, whether it's Australia, UAE, whatever it is. We keep hearing that there's a couple of things, right? One is that people want to go there, they travel there, they're in Bangalore, they're in Delhi, they're in Mumbai. They want to meet some really interesting people during their visit, as pertains to their philanthropy, as pertains to their academic endeavors, as pertains to sometimes their business endeavors. And we can certainly help get together, select the right group of people for our members to meet with when they go to India. But also, we keep hearing from a lot of people that wouldn't it be great if my son or my daughter or my niece or my nephew or my family friend's son or daughter could go to India and get an internship at a firm in India, learn about the country, spend a month or 2 or 3 traveling around the country, and can Indiaspora do something to help facilitate that? That's one of the things that we are thinking about, we are working on. We did do a Heritage India trip about 3 years ago now, where we selected via an essay competition some young students from Indian American students from here in the US who had not gone to India previously. And through the generosity of our members, we funded a 3-week stay for those young kids in India, in Ahmedabad, Delhi, and I think it was Cochin, if I remember correctly. So we could revive that, and we've got a lot of interest from several very senior Indian American executives at the top Fortune 500 companies, including global CEOs who have kind of encouraged us to think a little bit more about that. Right? So MR, maybe what I would propose is, in addition to us being here on the stage, it's more importantly about our community, because we are going to need their support over the next 10 years. So over the next, let's say 10 minutes or so, maybe if we can just walk around the room and collect people's thoughts, ideas, you can stand up, talk about what you wish for Indiaspora, where you see us going. The mics will come to you, and let's just have a conversation for the next 10 minutes or so.
Akhtar? Yeah, please.
First of all, congratulations. I mean, this is just such an outstanding group of people. And what you all have done over the last decade is just transformational. So as you started off by saying, kal, aaj aur kal. So if you want to talk about the future, right? I mean, we've kind of come with a, where we've all come from, have all kind of spent most of our time, and our young friends yesterday reminded me of that, just getting secure. And the language that we've been using, even the words that we've been using on stage today, is all about giving back. What we heard yesterday was not about giving back. What we heard our friends say is just show up. Show up every single day so that you are part of the community. So I think we've got to get out of this two-pocket thinking that we will extract and take as much as we can, and then we'll give back. Instead of actually saying there is only one pocket and that we exist, and how can Indiaspora change that mindset? Right, you've been talking so much about purpose. So if we can get to a point where we are actually getting everybody that is here from the community to just show up and show up in the community where they are, then I think the transformation you want to see, and that's what our young folks are actually asking us to do, is be part of their journey where they don't have a two-pocket thinking. They have a one-pocket thinking, that we are actually contributing with whatever we do to make the world a better place. So I hope that we kind of take us on that journey. Thank you.
Thank you. There's somebody at the back there. Oh, Nalini.
Nalini?
Morning, everyone. Nalini Saligram. I'm from Arogya World. So, MR, congratulations. Sanjeev, congratulations. This is fabulous, what the community you've built. But I've always felt, and I thought you're giving us a chance, so I'm going to give you my thoughts. I've always felt this is a room full of incredible brain power, right? Look at the collective power of the people here and the ideas and what they represent. So if you take up one issue or two issues that really affect us as a people, it could be health, it could be education, it could be India, it could be here, it doesn't matter. Pick one global cause or two global causes and let us collectively arrive at an action plan to solve it. I do believe we can make a difference, truly, with just the brain power. That's the only thing I feel missing from every Indiaspora meeting. What a wasted opportunity. There were 200 people who could have solved so many things. So please consider that.
Thank you, Nalini. There's Ashwin over here on my left.
Hi, this is Ashwin. MR, I support your concierge service as long as you don't start a matrimonial service.
We've helped in that too. We've helped in that too. Just ask our board member, Sejal.
MR matrimonial service, right?
We've had two marriages at Indiaspora.
Wow, wow. So, see, in me, the last 10 years, what I believe Indiaspora has done is giving a collective identity with recognition for Indians. We have a lot of smaller groups. Like there is even one association from the district I come from, Kanyakumari District Association, right? So with all those things, I think MR Sanjeev gave a collective identity for Indians. But in the next 10 years, in my request would be, I think we will see that Indiaspora making the Indian community into a contributing partner for the country we are in, to make a reliable partner. I think that partnership where we showing that, yes, this is our home and we are here to stay here and we are going to contribute across all aspects of the American culture of the country we live in. For example, I think we should try to encourage getting us more into law and order. And I think we should encourage getting into like armed service. Like if we should take pride, I would like to see it saying that, 5% of Indians, West Point graduates are from India. Like coming such things, right? I think that is one area we as a community should start contributing towards every aspect of American community and culture. That is one wish I would like to have, Amar.
Thank you. Thanks, Ashwin.
Yeah, one thing we've been asked to do is a report on the impact Indian Americans make on this community. So we're starting to work on that.
That's right.
You know, what is the impact across society Indian Americans?
And in fact, we are going to hear a little bit more about that in this very plenary. So I think you may be onto something, Ashwin. We'll take 2 or 3 more quickly before we get on to the next stage of our event. So if you could make it quick, there's one here and maybe a couple over here.
Yeah. Kanav? Yeah.
Hey, thanks for that. I think what struck me a lot is the tangible goals you put in early in the decade of saying 1% Congress folks in the Congress, right? So when we talk about giving back or talk about entrepreneurs coming from India to US, I think rather than doubling the giving back, if we can just have a list of philanthropy organizations we want to help and partner with, and as to your point on the brain power is, let's reverse the whole Google Summer of Code concept, which is all of us will spend some time in some philanthropy organizations to help them get better and productive rather than just giving money. Like we are the interns to them, you know, in a way to help them get better. And I think on the entrepreneurs, like I always get to know a list of folks who are coming from India and US and help them. There are some who are on the verge, but if we can collectively have that list of entrepreneurs who are on the verge of coming from India to US or just came to the US and are looking for help, we can collectively help them as well. So that will be a good one to do.
Thank you.
Kanav. There were a couple more hands here if we can make this quite quick before we move into the next stage of our plenary. There's one here at the center, here in, oh, yeah, sure.
Hi, my name is Suja. This is my first time at an Indiaspora event. So I live in San Jose. I have been working in tech all my 20 plus years. So this is really, really fascinating to me. I don't have anything to say as to what Indiaspora to do next, but I'm very, very inspired because every event that I have gone in my almost 25 years here has been focused on tech. So I'm the stereotype that, everybody Indian who's here is either in medicine or in IT. So I'm thoroughly inspired to learn about each and every one of you. And I haven't stopped talking about this to all my connections here, that there is a different world out there. So thank you for that. Thank you, and for Shobha especially, to make me feel included, because I came here very reluctantly. I don't know anybody. This is my first time. What am I going to do? So thank you, everybody, for making me feel like I belong, as well as I'm just excited I'm looking forward to learn more and then see how I can do better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
at the back.
Oh, one here.
Oh,
One here.
there's just two more at the
Yeah,
back, and
that's
then,
it.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, you can go.
Hi, my name is Salil. I am also the first time into this get together, and I'm very proud to be here. I think I have only one suggestion. I think if we can just take one issue, which actually is really an issue in India, and we can put all our energy to really address that issue, solve that issue to the core, and really make an impact that way, I think it's going to go a very long way for this diaspora, as well as for the 32 million that we're trying to connect. Just one issue, whatever that issue is, whether it's an education issue, whether it's the pollution issue, whether it's the air issue, whether it's the child education, girl-child education. I was here in Palo Alto, and then I'm actually spending most of my time in Gurgaon. And I can tell you, there's a variety of issues that are waiting to be solved. And I think if we can just direct our energy into solving that issue, it'll go very long way for this diaspora. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's a good point. You know, we are more a platform and a catalyst. I do see the merit of engaging and focusing on one thing or two things only, which is a great point. We have always been more a platform and a catalyst. You know, we've convened philanthropic organizations to do what they do better and more effectively. And there are various philanthropic organizations that do work on specific issues who we help all the time. So in that sense, we are a little bit of a different organization than a one-issue, single-focus kind of organization. But thank you. That is a good thought. Certainly something to keep in mind. Last person here at the back.
Oh, I get it. Okay, I was told that I have to keep short, so I was letting go of this opportunity to talk. But thank you for giving it. So I have two things to ask here and suggest. And first of all, this is my first year of joining Indiaspora, and I'm totally blown away with the values and the sense of giving that is happening here. My only suggestion is, because I work a lot with the youth, and I feel there's a huge gap of people of our generation and people who are sitting here, and how we are sharing those values with the youth so that they will be proud to share and take that value forward. And I think that's an opportunity that we are missing, and if we can, because at some point we have to pass the baton there. And it is important to bring the youth, and I also heard last few seconds that we are doing some exchange program. I'm also part of the Youth Rotary, where we are talking about it. So not only just within our community, but how can we bring youth from other communities to be proud and be part of our sharing from us, learning from us. And then when our kids are seeing including them, they will feel included as well. So I think it's very important to focus a little bit more of our efforts towards youth and sharing that values and wisdom. And we have an amazing amount of wisdom with us in our community. So that's where I'd like to share.
Thank you. Thanks to the entire community for participating in this town hall. This is just the start of these conversations. We'll have many more of these in the hallways, in the corridors, in other sessions, breakout sessions and plenary sessions as we move forward over the next day and a half or so. And we do have my excellent team members actually making notes of what was discussed. So this is not just idle talk, which will sort of evaporate into the ether. We will be thinking about all of these ideas and suggestions and more to come. I'd like to move on to the next stage of our program here today. You might have noticed, some of you in your agendas, that there was a very conspicuous person on the agenda that was missing this morning. And that was none other than Neera Tandon, who some of you heard yesterday. Neera was on a very important phone call, I believe, with the president and so on and so forth, and was unable to attend at the slotted time. But we are delighted and honored that Neera, who is the staff secretary to the President of the United States, she essentially, as I think Shekhar was describing yesterday in the Politics Roundtable, determines what the President, what information and what news percolates up to the President, what he sees, and so on and so forth. So a very vitally important nodal role in the United States government and a senior advisor to President Biden. Neera, what I'd like to do is, I'd like to call you up on the stage, just like I did Arun and Shekhar. And you can perhaps reminisce a little bit about Indiaspora at Mohonk and how it's evolved since then. Yeah, we'll make sure we get you a microphone. It's on stage. Oh, here it is. Here it is.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Oh, So I just will speak for a few minutes about my recollections from 10 years ago. And I was in a panel yesterday, and I'll just say a little bit about myself to connect all these dots. But I started working in the Clinton White House in the late 1990s when I was, in my late 20s. And at that point, there were very few Asian Americans, let alone South Asians, let alone Indian Americans in the White House in the US government. And 10 years ago, I had recently become the president of a think tank, the Center for American Progress. And I was the first South Asian to lead a think tank, and I'm actually honored to say now there are a few South Asians running think tanks, but I was the first. But I will say, what was most meaningful to me about our experience 10 years ago in Mohonk was I was in a room full of people I had never seen before. So I think what was so inspiring about that conference in upstate New York was that I had been in, there's assumptions about our community. There are leaders in medicine, we're leaders in business, we are leaders in healthcare. But I saw future political leaders. I saw leaders in academia. I saw leaders in the arts. I saw leaders in political organizing. I saw people who would spend the next 10 years not only enriching the country, but really ensuring that our community had a voice. And I remember speaking with MR 10 years ago about how other communities, other ethnic groups, racial groups in the United States have had years of institution building to give themselves a voice. Greek Americans, Jewish Americans, Italian Americans have big institutions that help, create a kind of positive cycle of supporting their voices and ensuring there are more people at the table. And that is why I'm incredibly inspired by this larger group of people 10 years later who are, what is amazing about this group is that we have more leaders in different sectors where we really see Indian Americans leading the country. Leading the country in, obviously, tech, leading the country in business, but leading the country in academia, in politics, in every sector. And that is why I think this conference is so critical. Just as that, that first conference created a spark, and I personally don't think it is an accident that we have so many more Indian American leaders in politics, in every sector. I don't think it's an accident that that just happened by itself. I think it is because we have an organization like Indiaspora who's really worked day in and day out to ensure that we are a community that is everywhere, that is supported everywhere, and that we build connections to support each other in those leadership roles. Thank you, Sanjeev.
Neera, thank you. We're happy to have you here, and we'll hear a little bit more from you later this afternoon in the